Hello everyone and welcome to our final class review for the Witchwood. We're going to be doing Warrior now. As we've done with all the other reviews before, and you're probably sick of me saying this by now, we have a 1 to 5 scale for rating the cards. 1 is for trash cards like Magma Rager, 2 is for your fringe tech cards like Dragon Slayer or Black Knight, 3 is for maybe playable or niche archetype cards like Plated Beetle or Deadly Shot, 4 is for staple or deck-defining cards like Gadget and Auctioneer or Wandering Monster. 5 is really the meta-defining cards. These are the cards that not only define the decks they're played in, but also all the other decks that are built across all the classes. These are cards like Call to Arms and Void Lord, that really affect how you build any given decks. So let's get started with Warrior. First up, we have Black Howl Gunspire. Black Howl Gunspire is a 7 mana 3/8 legendary minion with can't attack whenever this minion takes damage, deal 3 damage to a random enemy.
So it's technically not a minion, it's a building, but like obviously for the context of Hearthstone.
It's a minion as far as Hearthstone's concerned.
Absolute trash. Like this could easily be the new definition of our one.
Yeah, Black Owl Gunspire seems absolute rubbish. Even if you go through all the effort to activate it, it's not all that scary, right? Like what? You can deal up to 24 damage at most, and that could also hit minions. It could hit face. So there's nothing I like about Black Owl Gunspire. It's not a win condition for any warrior, and that's kind of what warrior decks need right now. So it's a really disappointing legendary for warrior to get.
If it had taunt, I would have said it might be playable, right? Because then things have to hit into it, and then the fact that they have to hit into it combined with its effect maybe could have done stuff.
Yeah.
But the fact that it literally does, you play it, it does nothing.
Yeah.
Makes me just very sad.
I have to agree, it's definitely a 1 for Black Hole Gunspire. Next up, we have Darius Crowley. Darius Crowley is a 5 mana 4/4 legendary minion with Rush, and after this attacks and kills a minion, gain +2/+2. So this is kind of a rush card. 5 mana 4/4 doesn't seem all that great on its own, but it can kind of get on the board, kill a smaller minion, eat it up, and grow stronger. So that's kind of the vibe we've got going here with Darius Crowley. I think Darius Crowley is pretty strong. I think it's... The big question is just whether Rush is that good. In a meta now that just generally does unfair things on the board, Rush is a very fair mechanic, so doing fair things might not be that good, but for the purpose of this Warrior review, I'm going to assume Rush is pretty decent, and we'll, at some point, maybe after some nerfs, find a meta where minion combat is actually a thing. So for those reasons, I'm going to lean towards giving Darius Crowley a 5. I think it's one of the main reasons to play Rush Warrior, along with some of the other cards that we're going to see. I think it could be like a 4, maybe, leaning towards a 5. 5 to say that it's meta-defining. I think it and the other Rush cards together is what makes it maybe meta-defining, rather than it by itself being so powerful that it pushes the deck.
I'm going to give it a 4, but for me, the main concern is like on turn 5, is four attack enough though?
Yeah.
So like that's kind of the concern. In order to kill, like you're gonna need to, and not to mention you need your opponent, the enemy minion needs to have 4 health or less, and needs to have less than 3 or less attack.
I believe it needs to be 4 or less attack. Because I think if the minion would put Darius to 2, he still gains the +2/+2 if it dies. Does it work like that? I think so.
Usually those things don't. Usually it would die. Like
I'm not actually sure. That definitely makes the interaction worse.
4/4, I'm expecting both to die.
I was expecting Darius to survive.
Okay,
which makes
we'll have to see.
Big difference. I think if you're right and it just dies, then it might just be a 4. Because there's not a lot of free attack things running around. You can combine it with something like Woodcutter's Axe we'll get to later, to kind of make it easier for it to survive. But I think if you can set Darius Crowley up, it can set you up for the rest of the game. So that's kind of what I like about Darius Crowley.
He helps you.
Yeah. And afterwards, when he starts going face for 6 damage, that's pretty good. Next up, we have Deadly Arsenal. Deadly Arsenal is a 6-mana warrior spell. It's a epic, and it reads: reveal a weapon from your deck, deal its attack to all minions. So you need to put in big attack weapons in your deck. And at the moment, that's pretty much just Gorehowl and Arcanine Reaper. I think anything less than 4 attack would not be worth it. And the best weapons now, like Blood Razor? What? Blood Razor, yeah. That's just what
Blood Razor.
I was thinking it was like, I wanted to say Blood Fen Razor. That's what I kept wanting to say. Anyway.
I think you said that early. I think you said it in one of the other videos.
Oh boy. Apologies. Blood Razor, the problem is that only has 2 attack. And, with any of your early game weapons that you're playing to help, fight for the board early. Or Fiery War Axe, Deadly Arsenal is not really doing enough. So that's the big problem I have with it. You can't put early game weapons, and early game is often the time you really want the weapons. Those are the weapons you want in your deck.
It's not a bad idea, but I think it's a bit sort of it's a rather fringy removal option, I think, for Warrior. I'm not sure, and I mean, like you say, control. If let's say, this kind of removal, you probably want to put it in a control Warrior sort of shell, a slower Warrior. Then the whole point is you want the early weapons to not die.
Yeah. And if this happens to be towards the end of the deck, or you've drawn your 2 or 3 weapons, let's say, then it's going to just be a dead card. So most of the time, I'd rather have Brawl or some of the other kind of removal options. I think Warrior has quite a few, so I'm not sure it really needs Deadly Arsenal. I mean, there are cards like Sleep with Fishes that are rotating out, but yeah, I'm not really sold by Deadly Arsenal, so I'm going to give it a 2.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 2 as well.
Next up, we have Town Crier. I think possibly the best warrior card of the set, in my opinion. It's a 1-mana 1/2 epic minion with Battle Cry. Draw a rush minion from your deck. So this is the cheapest tutor type effect in the game. By tutor type, we mean a card that draws a specific type of card from your deck. We've seen quite a few this set in particular, especially in the neutrals as well. And Town Crier, I think, is really powerful. A 1-mana 1/2 sets you up well in the early game to maybe possibly make a value trade, or just have at least some kind of turn 1 play, which you want in what's probably going to be a tempo deck. And the other nice thing is later in the game, Town Crier, you can combine it with that rush card immediately to actually play that on the board. And there are some pretty decent rush cards. I mean, we saw Darius Crowley, and there's some other good ones coming up. And I think the curve that Town Crier allows you to do with the deck is a very key aspect to the deck itself. So I think I'm probably going to give it a 4. I think I really wanted to give it a 5, but I'm not that convinced by the rush deck, as we've kind of been going through this review. My plan was to give this a 5, honestly. But now I'm almost a little bit more set on giving it a 4, because I'm just not sure if the rush deck is going to be meta-defining enough.
So for me, I think I'm going to give it a 5. I think I'm still going to stick with a 5, because even if a sole rush deck isn't a thing, I still think Town Crier with even a couple rush minions will still. I think, like, from our definition, the fact that Town Crier is a 1-drop, I think that alone will mean that every other class will then need to react with the fact that Warrior is playing Town Crier on 1.
Yeah, and I think you find your rush cards reliably enough as a result. Okay, fine.
Yeah,
you talked me back into my rating of 5.
So that's my when I what I always think about, I'm like, okay, what are definitions? And then, like, for me, this is a very definition of what a meta-defining card is, right? Because now every other class has to constantly go, okay, how are we reacting to a turn 1 Town Crier that's fetching them a Darius Crowley,
Rabid Wargun, Militia Commander.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Okay, I changed my mind again on Town Crier. I think as my first reaction to it was that it was one of the best cards in the set, which now we've seen more of the cards. I don't necessarily think that, but I think it's probably the best warrior card of the set. I think it's better than Darius Crowley, partly also because it is an epic, so you can actually play 2 of it, and just it allows you to get your rush minions, which is the key of this, the key aspect of this tempo warrior deck, or this rush warrior deck. It allows you to get those and actually, just reliably curve out, which is exactly what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have Festus Hulk. Festus Hulk is a 5 mana 2/7 rare minion with after a friendly minion attacks, gain +1 attack. So this is, a card that can grow quite large. It's not going to get to the kind of frothing berserker kind of power levels in terms of how much it can actually grow. But it does have, by base, a better stat line. I mean, 5 mana 2/7 isn't really that great. You kind of want to probably have 2 minions attack the turn you're playing Festus Hulk to kind of get it to at least start off at a 5 mana 4/7 for your opponent making trades. But to be quite honest, if you're 2 minions ahead on the board and playing Festus Hulk, that's kind of a little bit more win more than it is really a solid card in most situations.
Yeah, it's possible. Also, 5 mana. I'm just trying to think. I'm surely there are better 5 drops to play as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, okay. I mean, just worst case scenario, could you not just play either Bittertide Hydra or
Cobalt
Scalebane?
Yeah.
When it comes to 5 drops, those are currently my questions. Is why am I playing this card over Cobalt Scalebane or Bittertide Hydra?
Yeah. I think for me, I'm going to have to call this at a 2. I think it'll be a fringe card at best in any of those kind of very minion-heavy warrior decks. As you mentioned, They are probably just better 5 drops to play a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think I have to agree. A 2 lean towards a 1 even. Most of the time, and maybe there's some insane combo that makes this good, right?
Maybe. You would need some kind of tokeny deck to make it grow enough in stats, and I don't think that's a thing for warrior. Next up, we have Militia Commander, one of the first cards revealed, and a pretty powerful rush minion. It's 4 mana 2/5 with rush and battle cry, gain +3 attack this turn. So basically a 4 mana 5/5 on the turn you play it, and after that it'll be a 4 mana 2 something depending on what kind of minion it was actually used to kill. So I think Militia Commander is a pretty powerful card. I think it doesn't leave behind the strongest body in the world. And once again, I'm a little bit afraid for the rush deck, but I think Militia Commander is definitely, probably alongside Darius Crowley, the most powerful rush card that you can play. And so I think in that way, it is very much, deck defining for that deck. I don't see you building Rush Warrior without 2 Militia Commanders.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of the draw cards to play in that deck.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, it's essentially a 5 damage sort of removal spell and leave behind a body.
Yeah.
A 2x body.
Yeah. So I think Militia Commander is pretty good. I think it'll definitely be a staple of the Rush Warrior deck, so I'm going to give it a 4.
I think it'll be a staple of so for me it's a 4 as well. I think it'll be a staple of there's quite a lot of warriors.
Yeah.
Even perhaps not tempo warriors, this might still be good enough, I think.
Maybe, that's true. It is also something that other decks do have to consider with their 4 drops and possibly even their 5 drops that they have to worry about. How's it going to fare up against the Militia Commander? Which is kind of the thing where it's sort of almost leaning on a 5, but that largely depends on how good Tempo Warrior is, or how
Warrior is as a whole.
How good Warrior is as a whole, yeah. Because as you say, Militia Commander can be played across multiple Warrior archetypes. Next up, we have Red Band Wasp. Red Band Wasp is a 2 mana 1/3 rush beast. It's a rare, and it has +3 attack while damaged. So basically enrage +3 attack. I think Red Band Wasp is pretty bad. I think a 2 mana 1 attack rush is kind of bad, and if it has to kill, well, it doesn't have to kill something, but it has to actually survive, in which case, it's going to be a 4x where that its health is probably going to be at most 1 or 2. Well, it has to be at most 2, probably more reasonably 1. So I just don't see Red Band Wasp kind of trading favorably against anything but dudes.
Yeah, and I mean it does. What's a 2-drop? It does not feel good, right? No. To play a 1-attack minion. For me, it never feels really good playing a 1-attack minion on turn 2.
Yeah, even though this one has rush, I mean, I'm not really sure. Also, this is not what you want to draw with your Town Crier, which makes me not want to put it in any kind of rush deck as well.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be playing this.
Yeah. So next up we have Oh, sorry. So I'm gonna give a Red Wasp a 2. Yeah, sorry, forgot about the rating. It's
Yeah, the
almost
Wasp
bordering
also
on a
give it
1,
a
I
two.
think.
Yeah. And also two, like maybe sort of if you want to go hyper aggressive, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, maybe it's the only synergy that I think could make it work is with Woodcutter's Axe, but I think that's asking too much from Woodcutter's Axe. But we'll get to exactly what Woodcutter's Axe is towards the end of this audio review. But next up we have another Rush minion, 3 mana 3/3 with Rush, Rabid Worgen. It's common as well, so I think this is pretty solid. It curves very well with Woodcutter's Axe, which we will eventually get to. But I think that this is pretty good. It's generally going to eat up a 2-drop, right? There's a kind of a lot of 2/2s or 2/3s in the meta at the moment. So if Rabid Worgen is able to eat up a 2-drop and then stay on the board, it can be pretty decent. So we'll see. I
mean, it's like Wolf Rider with upside, right?
Yeah, it's kind of it's Wolf Rider the first time it trades, and then it goes face, and it's like a normal Wolf Rider.
Yeah, so like I feel like it's
Yeah.
better than Wolf Rider a lot of the times.
Yeah, I think it's definitely that extra minion that this came really late in the reveal. I think it was only in the final reveal. So I think this is definitely one of the extra minions that the Rush deck needed in order to kind of curve out reliably with Rush card after Rush card. You've got good curve going Town Crier on 1, Woodcutter's Axe into Rabid Worgen into Militia Commander. But we'll see when we get to the actual example of that Rush deck just now. So I think Rabid Worgen is going to be a 4 for me. Maybe leaning on a 3 because it's not one of the spectacular Rush cards, but I think it's going to be difficult to drop it if you want that kind of reliable Rush
Yeah, for me, it's also going to be a 4. I think it's good. It's going to be part of the glue. It's going to be, I think, even close to 3 because like it's going to be a solid card, but it's not major draw card to the archetype, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely one of the hangers-on of the Rush crew rather than the one of the main band.
It's not like one of the. It's not the It's like not part of the highlights, right? He's just a solid bread and butter kind of guy.
Yeah, put it this way: if the archetype was like the band, Darius Crowley, Town Crier, and Militia Commander would be the 3 main members of Rush, and Rabid Worgen and Woodcutter's Axe probably the supporting act.
The sound guy.
Yeah, Rabid Worgen's like the technician setting everything up as well. Anyway, moving on, we have Warpath. Warpath is a 2-mana spell. It has Echo, and it deals 1 damage to all minions. So essentially Whirlwind, and you're paying 1 more for the Echo. I think this is actually a pretty good card in some Control Warrior decks. I think it has a lot of versatility that people might be underrating a little bit. But I don't think it's any kind of spectacular draw into a Control Warrior deck. Like, I mean, it's not a draw to playing that kind of Control Warrior deck.
This is Warpath now, right?
Yeah, Warpath, yeah.
Yeah, Warpath, I mean, it's reminiscent. It's basically, I mean, obviously it's Whirlwind effect with the premium. I mean, it's, in a way, it's similar to Revenge. But Revenge, if you remember, had that advantage of when you were under, I think it was under 12 health, it dealt 3 damage to everything. So it had that, obviously, that higher return if you were down health, whereas Warpath is always just going to be 2 mana, deal 1 damage with Echo. So,
but I mean, you can make it into kind of dealing more damage, but it's going to cost you mana instead of having to be at a lower health pool.
Yeah, so for me, what I like it is its versatility. And once again, it's one of those cards that will be a bread and butter kind of one more than the star of the show.
Yeah, definitely.
So for me, like it's between a 3 and a 4, I think. Like, so I'm gonna give it a 4, I think.
Yeah,
because I think it will be quite strong if a slow Control Warrior is a deck. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be more of a 3. I only really see it being good in that deck, and I'm not really sure that kind of Control Warrior is necessarily gonna be that good. But there will definitely be some people out there playing it. Cough, cough, Fibonacci.
Yeah, I was about to say Fibonacci.
I think the other thing that can be a little bit underestimated sometimes with some of these Echo cards, and we mentioned it a little bit on like the Rogue review with Pickpocket and that, is you can also kind of use Warpath make some trades and then use Warpath again, right? Depending on like if you have Divine Shield minions on the board or Taunt minions. So you can kind of use it neatly like that. The only problem is I think in a lot of the decks you're playing Warpath, you're not really having minions on board that often. So the kind of option to make trades with it is going to be largely underutilized, let's say. So yeah, I'm gonna give Warpath a 3. I can't remember if I actually said that. Next up, and finally for Warrior, we have Woodcutter's Axe, the card we've been kind of hinting at and mentioning quite a bit, as it has to do with the rush mechanic. Woodcutter's Axe is a 2-mana 2/2 weapon. It's a common. It has Death Rattle. Give a friendly minion with Rush +2/+1. So I think this is quite an underrated weapon. I think. I think Woodcutter's Axe. I think 2-mana 2/2 weapons are actually not too bad right now in the meta, and I think its Death Rattle is pretty powerful. You know, the curve is once again Town Crier into Woodcutter's Axe into, if you don't have to use the Woodcutter's Axe on 2, you can get it to activate maybe on 4 with your Militia Commander, or 5 with your Darius at a long shot. Or it can just activate on your Rabid Worgen, and that's one of the reasons I like Rabid Worgen in the deck. Not to mention having a weapon on 2 works with some of the neutral cards, but we'll see that just now in the actual Rush Warrior deck.
Yeah, so for me it's also a 4. Just a solid weapon. Considering now that we don't have 5 works on 2.
Yeah, and I think this is a pretty solid weapon, so I agree. It's a 4. And now we can actually look at that deck. So let's first look at this Rush Warrior deck. This is kind of a Rush Tempo Warrior deck. With the Tempo Warrior archetype is almost like a throwback back to when we had kind of a Dragon Tempo Warrior thing going. Here we have, that kind of the key kind of rush curve we're talking about. Town Crier, Woodcutter's Axe, Rabid Worgen, Militia Commander, Darius Crowley. And then we have some kind of value in the later game as well. We have Countess Ashmore, another card that will draw you a rush cards. We have Ken, which is the only Death Rattle in the deck, so that's something that can be drawn off the Countess. Grom as maybe a finisher, although there's not particularly that many good ways to activate it in the deck, which is kind of the one thing I had against it. Lich King as well is just a good late game value engine. Leroy, another way for you to push your advantage. The idea, I think, with these kind of tempo rush decks is you're going to want to use the rush minions to control the board and use the rest to kind of go face. So we've got some aggressive minions like Corcoran Elite as well. Captain Greenskin helps buff up your weapons. Frothing Berserker, a minion that thrives well off using your minions to trade. It's just going to keep growing and hitting face quite hard. And then we've also got one of the new neutral cards, Hench Clan Thug. It's a 3-mana 3/3 that when your hero attacks gains +1/+1. So it sets up really well. If you set up the Woodcutter's Axe on 2, there's a lot of good synergy here. There's like the Frothing Berserker. If you're trading with it, it's going to buff the Frothing Berserker. Not from the Woodcutter's Axe Death Rattle, but I mean just naturally because the way Frothing Berserker works. Similar thing with the Hench Clan Thug, and then Rabid Worgen will actually gain the buff from the Death Rattle on the Woodcutter's Axe. So on turn 3 could arguably be a 5/4 rush minion, which is pretty powerful.
It's quite scary.
Yeah. And I mean, similar things with like Militia Commander, because sometimes you're going to equip Woodcutter's Axe on 2 and not use it on 2 against a lot of decks, and then you can kind of drag it to its synergy working on turn 4 maybe, where you're getting a 7/6 kind of rushing minion for 4. So I think I personally think this deck could be pretty good. The big question is just whether this kind of deck is going to make any sense in the meta going ahead. It's a very, very fair deck in a way, except with just tons and tons of initiative. That's what this deck is. It's just initiative in a like box, right? Like there's all these things that have initiative, weapons, even some charge minions, and then of course the rush minions themselves. And we've also got things like execute and battle rage to just refill your hand. So yeah, overall, I mean, I really like this deck, and it's pretty expensive actually if you look at it. As the top end is mostly just legendaries, but overall, I think the deck could be pretty good going forward.
Yeah, this is definitely the kind of show I expect to see. Like a lot of tempo warriors, or a lot of the mid-range warriors take on.
Yeah. And then next we can look at one of the other archetypes that's gotten quite a lot of hype in this expansion, and that's largely because of Baku the Moon Eater, or Baku Moon Eater. Oh, it is the Moon Eater, yeah.
Baku the Moon Eater.
Yeah, because Baku, if your deck has only odd cost cards, will upgrade your hero power, and everyone likes tanking up to rank up. So Pandemonia here has brought us one of his favorite archetypes of all time, Control Warrior. In this case, it's an odd Control Warrior.
Yeah, so this, I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot trickier to build. A lot of cards are missing. You kind of like, ooh, do I want Armor Smith? No, you can't have it. Do you want Execute? Well, you can't have it. Slam is also missing. So it's kind of basically trying to then fit in between bits and pieces, and trying to still put it together. So overall, I think the deck still has quite solid removal suite.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still got Shield Block, Shield Slam. It's you've still got your Flashback Double Brawl. Now you've also got the addition of Voodoo Doll, and that combined with something like Whirlwind, works quite nicely. I'm not sold on this. I'm curious to try this deck out, but I'm not sure how effective it will be, because I mean the only real win conditions you have really, I mean, it's Alexstrasza, Ysera, and then maybe Stonehill Defender is gets you a win condition, but
or like Elise, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem I have. All the late game decks at the moment have pretty good win conditions, and that's the big problem for Control Warrior. The current kind of decks have generally gone on the mill plan, with the fatigue plan, with the Cold Light Oracle and Dead Man's Hand. You can't play Dead Man's Hand in an Odd Warrior, and Cold Light Oracle is rotating, so I'm just not sure. I mean, the game plan...
Drum as well.
Yeah, the game plan pretty much just needs to be like tank up, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically...
remove everything and never die.
Exactly.
And then win in fatigue, because you have too much health. I mean, that's the plan.
That's the basic plan, right? I mean, that's ultimately what this is going for.
Yeah, it's very much kind of an anti-aggro deck, right? More than something that's going to do well in the control mirrors. There you're going to have to hope for something good, or Felice, or finding a way to get your Sarah to stick, or something like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of people that are going to be keen for this. I think it's one of the things that excited most people with Baku. So I imagine you're going to definitely see some of these, and there's going to be a lot of different options people I think are going to go for. But I think this is a good shell for it. I also like the Lone Champion, because you just don't have a 2-drop, and you're going to just hero power on 2. Lone Champion's often just going to come down as a 3-mana 2/4 with Divine Shield and Taunt, and that's pretty good.
Yeah, so I mean, basically just hoping to stall, and ultimately another win condition is just making your opponent rage quit. Right, they're just gonna get so frustrated.
Literal fatigue IRL, or in real life, yeah.
Exactly, make people like want to go like, I'm over this game. Okay, concede. Okay, yeah. You win.
Yeah, frustration warrior.
Exactly.
Yeah. Overall, though, like, where do you actually think Warrior is going to be? I mean, it's been in a pretty bad position at the moment, pre-rotation, pre-Year of the Raven. Do you think Warrior is going to improve a lot? I mean, how do you see it going in terms of the meta moving forward?
I think it's definitely going to improve a lot. I'm not sure, if Rush and like what we've been talking about will it be enough to make it like the top dog. I think it could easily be in like the top half of decks, in competitive decks. So I think it could still be up there. I'm just not sure if it will be, the deck to beat.
Yeah, I think I agree. The Rush Warrior, I think, could be kind of the king of mid-range decks. I'm just not really sure that we're going to get anywhere near a kind of mid-rangey meta. So that's the big issue there. And I think that Warrior is kind of going to be middle of the pack-ish. It's probably going to be better than Druid, which looks like it's going to be in a pretty weak spot with just this kind of Spiteful decks. And I think that the Rush decks could particularly prey on a lot of the Spiteful Summoner decks. In particular, Spiteful Priest and Spiteful Druid. I think that's really where this deck is. I don't think it's going to be as good as like your rogues, mages, and
Warlocks.
warlocks, yeah, and even priest. I think those four are probably going to be up there at the top. I think mage might be the only class now that we've looked at all the classes that actually has any way to kind of contest the value of warlock. With cards like Syndragosa, Toki, and the hero, or Frostage Jaina, most importantly. I think it's kind of the only deck that can go toe to toe in the late game, other than maybe Control Priest with stealing all your stuff. So I think that Warrior is kind of going to fit in that mid tier levels. I think the one class I can say will probably be stronger than is Druid, at least depending on how good Spiteful Druid actually is, which is I think the only real Druid option. So yeah, I mean that's the final class. Next up will be the neutrals. So make sure you check that out as well. Obviously, we've mentioned a lot of the neutral cards throughout the reviews. If you think you have maybe a better Control Warrior deck, maybe even just a normal Control Warrior deck without the Baku synergy, feel free to share in the comments. Also, feel free to kind of critique our decks as much as you want. We always love hearing feedback. These are all theory crafts, so we have no idea. And if you try out any of these decks after launch, make sure you come back and let us know how they went, because I don't think we're going to have time to try out all the decks we've come up with. So, please, any feedback is great. Also, please like, subscribe, and you can follow us on Twitter as well to give us feedback there, at PandemoniaZA and at @dib_gaming. So thanks a lot for sticking around for all the reviews. Share them with your friends, and we will keep doing this, and we'll let you know how things turn out. The best way to kind of keep up with our thoughts on the meta as it continues is also to check out the Magma Rages podcast. We'll be doing that weekly, and you can also check it out on this channel as well, and we'll give updates on maybe how some of these decks have fared and what's been the best decks going forward in the first couple of weeks of the meta as post-release. So make sure to check that out. But for now, cheerio.
Cheerio.